Have you noticed how quickly you can get things done when you absolutely have to? A deadline suddenly matters. A health problem shows up. Money gets tight. Someone is counting on you. And somehow, the discipline you couldn't find last week appears out of nowhere. That's the strange part, isn't it? When nothing feels urgent, getting yourself to do the right thing can feel almost impossible. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You'll get serious next week. You'll wait until you're motivated, rested, focused, or finally ready. But then life backs you into a corner, and suddenly you're capable of far more than you thought. So maybe the problem was never your ability. Maybe the real issue was waiting for a reason strong enough to move. Because when life finally puts your back against the wall, you move. You adapt. You find the energy. You find the discipline. The question is, why does it take a crisis to bring out what was already inside you? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, I'll start when I feel ready? What if ready isn't coming? What if the people who change their lives simply stop waiting for permission? One reason discipline feels difficult is because life often lets us get away with delay. You skip one workout and nothing seems to happen. You put off an important task and tomorrow looks exactly like today. You tell yourself you'll start next week, and life doesn't immediately punish you for it. That's what makes comfort so dangerous. It hides the real cost. The consequences aren't usually immediate, they're gradual. They show up months or years later as missed opportunities, declining health, financial stress, or a life that feels smaller than it could have been. The problem is not that people don't care about their future. The problem is that today's comfort often feels more real than tomorrow's consequences. Most people think they need motivation before they can take action. They wait for the right mood, the right energy, or the perfect mindset. But motivation is unreliable because emotions are unreliable. Some days you feel focused. Other days you feel tired, discouraged, or distracted. If your progress depends on how you feel, your progress will always rise and fall with your emotions. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to make promises when you're inspired and how easy it is to abandon them when that feeling disappears? The people who make lasting changes aren't necessarily more motivated. They simply learn not to negotiate with every emotion. They act because they decided, not because they felt like it. A lot of what we call procrastination is actually fear wearing a different name. Fear of failing. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of putting in effort and not getting the result you hoped for. Sometimes it's even fear of succeeding and discovering that life will ask more from you afterward. So instead of moving forward, you stay busy. You research, plan, organize, and think about what you're going to do. From the outside it looks productive, but deep down you know you're avoiding the moment where action becomes real. The uncomfortable truth is that confidence rarely comes before action. Most confidence is built afterward. The people you admire were afraid too, they just stopped waiting for fear to disappear before taking the next step. Many people hear the word discipline and immediately think of restriction, pressure, or forcing themselves through life. But discipline is actually one of the highest forms of self-respect. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you strengthen trust in who you are. Every time you repeatedly ignore your own commitments, that trust becomes weaker. Think about it, if someone constantly broke promises to you, eventually you would stop believing them. The same thing happens internally. You begin doubting yourself. Discipline is not about becoming harsh or perfect. It's about becoming dependable. It's about proving to yourself that your goals, values, health, and future matter enough to deserve consistent action, even on ordinary days. Have you ever noticed how people suddenly become disciplined when life leaves them no other choice? Someone who struggled for years to take care of their health suddenly becomes consistent after a serious diagnosis. Someone who kept delaying important decisions suddenly becomes focused when their family's future depends on it. What changed? Their ability didn't magically appear overnight. Their priorities became impossible to ignore. Crisis has a way of removing distractions and exposing what truly matters. That's why discipline feels hard until your life depends on it. The pressure doesn't create strength, it reveals it. The lesson isn't that you need a crisis. The lesson is that clarity can do what comfort often cannot. When something becomes important enough, action follows naturally. Most people think big changes happen because of big decisions, but identity is usually shaped by small daily choices. You don't become disciplined in a single moment. You become disciplined every time you follow through when it would be easier not to. Every action becomes a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. If you keep choosing patience, you become more patient. If you keep choosing responsibility, you become more responsible. The opposite is also true. The reason small habits matter so much is because they slowly change how you see yourself. Over time, discipline stops feeling like something you're trying to do and starts feeling like part of who you are. A lot of people think discipline takes freedom away, but in many cases the opposite is true. The lack of discipline is what creates so much stress. When you avoid difficult tasks, they don't disappear, they follow you around in the background. They sit in your mind when you're trying to relax. They create anxiety, guilt, and a constant feeling that something important is being neglected. Discipline doesn't remove discomfort from life, but it often prevents small problems from becoming overwhelming ones. There's a certain peace that comes from knowing you're handling what needs to be handled. That's why discipline habits are not just about productivity. They're also about emotional healing, stress relief, and creating a life that feels calmer and more stable. One of the biggest mistakes people make is believing they need to feel ready before they begin. But if you look back at the most important changes in your life, chances are you weren't completely ready when they started. Most growth begins in uncertainty. You take the first step while still doubting yourself. You make the call while still feeling nervous. You start the habit while still lacking confidence. Waiting for complete certainty often becomes another excuse to stay where you are. The truth is that action creates clarity far more often than clarity creates action. You don't become ready and then begin. In many cases, you become ready because you began. The first step is rarely comfortable, but it changes everything that follows. Why discipline feels hard until your life depends on it ultimately comes down to awareness. The ability you are looking for may already exist within you. What is often missing is not potential, but urgency, clarity, and commitment. You do not need a crisis to discover your strength. You do not need life to force discipline upon you before choosing it yourself. Take one step today. Then another tomorrow. Allow patience, gratitude, self-discipline, and faith in a better future to guide your actions. Let consistency become stronger than temporary emotion. And remember, why discipline feels hard until your life depends on it is not a lesson about pressure. It is a reminder that your future is being shaped by what you repeatedly choose today. Share your thoughts below. How are you healing today? Until next time, keep moving forward with courage, wisdom, and hope.